It is Friday, July 10th. Let's talk PlayStation. Let's start it off with our PlayStation Plus reminder. The July games are currently available. That is Erica, NBA 2K20, and Rise of the Tomb Raider. You have plenty of time to download these games or add them to your library. Let's start off with something exciting, or at least what I've really been looking forward to, oddly enough, is the official PlayStation 5 cases and box art. We now know what PS5 games will look like when you buy them at retail or order them online to be shipped to your house. If you're not buying digital, this is what they look like, which is, I guess, for the most part, pretty expected. A lot of the mock-ups were pretty close, except the case color, so we are still going with a translucent blue. If you do compare it to an original PS4 case, looks like it might be a slightly darker blue, but still a transparent blue nonetheless. On the top, you have that border, which is now white, matching the PlayStation 5's controller and the console itself. I think we kind of expected some sort of white color scheme to be incorporated. They initially revealed this on the PlayStation blog with the official art for Spider-Man Miles Morales as their example, and it looks good. I'm pleased with it. I'll tell you, I know a lot of people wanted the black case or a white case, something a bit different, but I will say that if you were to have this racked up on a shelf like many game collectors might have, this will stick out like a sore thumb just because of that white border. So I'm fine with how it looks. It sticks with the PlayStation blues, and if you do look at, say, their YouTube channel, for example, they are going with that blue and white branding. If you look at the top left corner of all their thumbnails, that's kind of the direction they're going in terms of design language. So we know the blue is not really leaving PlayStation when it comes to their identity. Now, in terms of this particular game, a lot of people are calling out that, hey, the Spider-Man Miles Morales box art does not have only on PlayStation in that white border like Sony often likes to do. And it does have the PlayStation Studios logo on the bottom right corner, which Sony already clarified a few months ago that moving forward for PlayStation 5 specifically, that's how they will label worldwide studios, but also second-party games. So, reminder, it's not necessarily a first-party game, but it will be a game that is under PlayStation's IP, more or less, that could be second-party or first-party. So as of right now, it's not worth looking too much into this based off of Sony's history with this label, which has been very inconsistent, where Horizon and Detroit had the only on PlayStation moniker. They went to PC. The Spider-Man Miles Morales trailer on YouTube says only on PlayStation, clear as day near the end of the trailer. That's clearly not indicative of this box art that we're looking at. The PlayStation website has added and removed that label plenty of times for current PS4 exclusives, so it's just not worth really getting into that based off of our initial unveiling of PS5 cases and box art. Now, if you remember, about 2 weeks ago, we had what appeared to be a real-life picture of PlayStation 5, where somebody was holding the console up in a production facility, and of course the image quality was pretty poor, noticeable artifacts, so could have been fake, maybe it was real, but either way, it was at least nice to romanticize the idea that, hey, that's what a real PS5 will look like in your hand, because we've been talking about how the console is going to be fairly large. Well, now we have an image just like that, but for the DualSense, where looks like it might be a real picture, but also could very easily be fake, considering that you can easily 3D print something like this. The image quality is once again pretty poor. The angle is a little bit suspect, but of course it looks larger just based off of that angle alone, so even if it's a real object being photographed, you could easily hold a DualShock 4 like that to present it to look that large. But either way, at least it's cool to see what looks like a DualSense in real life. It's just one of those things where if you don't like the console design or how the DualSense looks or now the box art, you might grow to like it a little bit more once you see it in person. Now, you can't do that, of course, but candid photographs, even if they're fake, they look real enough to where it presents a better sense of what the product actually is when you see it and hold it in your hands, versus all the product shots that we've seen before that really glamorize how the products look. Next up, we've got a pretty interesting post to go over from LinkedIn. This is coming from Video Games Deluxe, which is a somewhat smaller AAA studio out in Sydney, Australia. And their post reads, having finished the critically well-received LA Noire, the VR case files, we are now gearing up for a new project, a AAA open-world title in VR for Rockstar. 2020 marks our 7th year of working exclusively for Rockstar in Sydney, and we are excited to taking on this groundbreaking project. Now, despite this being very ambiguous, there's only a few directions that this can reasonably go, right? Where we just had a PS5 reveal event with GTA 5 opening the show, expanded and enhanced on PS5. Now we know what enhanced looks like. What about expanded? That could be something like VR support for a game that already has a first-person perspective built in. Now, this would still take a considerable amount of time to implement something like VR. It would be a very ambitious project, and that's kind of what it appears to be, just judging off of that post from LinkedIn. But it's important to note, this could also be Red Dead Redemption 2. This could just be strictly PC support, where those headsets could easily accommodate the demanding nature of a project like this, right? Because obviously something like this, PSVR will work on PS5. Developers can keep making PS4 and PS5 games with PSVR support, but we still need a next generation headset. What does that look like? When will we see it? Maybe 2021's too soon for something like that. Maybe the current headset could work with a lot of limitations, although I don't think that's viable. Either way, a lot of people have been joking about how much GTA 5 we've been getting for 3 console generations, but I mean, this would be a very meaningful update that dramatically changes how you play the game. So even though it might only be for PSVR owners or PC users that have premium headsets, I mean, this would be something that I think is totally worth it. For our next news story, we have another game that's confirmed as a free upgrade from PS4 to PS5. That is Dirt 5. So if you buy it on PS4, you get the PS5 version for free. That's great. The game's also confirmed to run at 120 frames per second on PS5. Now, both of these things were previously announced for Series X, where it's smart delivery, 120 frames. So it's just good to see that these things are the same on PlayStation 5, right? Actually, if you look at the smart delivery list, there's still a lot of third-party games on there where we're waiting for those publishers to announce any sort of PlayStation plans, which, it's always a thing where it sets precedence, right? This is why it was so important when CD Projekt Red came out first and said, hey, as a third-party game, we're doing smart delivery on Xbox. Right away when that came out, I said, oh, great, so it's going to be the same for PlayStation, more or less. Generally speaking, publishers are pretty platform agnostic, unless some kind of money's in play for marketing rights or timed exclusivity or something to that effect, right? But other than that, they try to be pretty platform agnostic, so you can't offer a free upgrade on Xbox and not do it on PlayStation. So there's still a lot of games on that smart delivery list, though, third party, that we're waiting for confirmation on PlayStation. As I mentioned, it's a rolling basis, so Dirt 5 is just another one that got added to the list, which is great, but it's still very important, as always, to watch Microsoft's actions, because a lot of that third-party stuff relates directly to PlayStation, which, for our next news story, we're learning that Microsoft is mandating and openly talking with publishers, saying, hey, you can't charge for your next-gen upgrades in terms of presenting it as DLC, downloadable content, something to that effect, right? So basically, Microsoft is outlining how developers and publishers can, approach offering versions for both platforms. And like Sony, they're apparently being very flexible in that you can do different SKUs, but if you're doing smart delivery, it has to be one SKU, which will operate kind of like how we do today with X1, X1X, or PS4, PS4 Pro, right? It's one disc, but it has different performance settings for those platforms. It will also have the same save file across all these devices. A smart delivery game will use one achievement list for both hardware generations, which is really what we also see on PlayStation, right? Where depending on the game, depending on the SKU, depending on how each developer and publisher approaches it, we could have different trophy lists for Vita and PS4, or they're the same, they use the same save files, sometimes they don't use the same save files. Really depends on how that game handles it. But Microsoft is outlining the same thing, but they are encouraging free upgrades. They want people to do smart delivery. They want the upgrades to be free. Even if they're not a part of smart delivery, they're saying we will support any sort of free upgrade entitlements that you want to offer, which is good that they're very accommodating in that respect. That outlines what we can also see on PlayStation, which Sony has already more or less come out and said that they're very flexible on this approach as well. Now, if you remember last week, we were going over that Bloomberg report that stated Sony was looking to acquire Leyou Technologies for about $1.23 billion, or somewhere around there, right, is where the bidding would have been. There's other interested parties like iDream Sky or Tencent, but we went over, what this deal could look like for Sony, all the developers this company owns. Well, as I'm filming this right now, it was recently announced that trading for this company has been halted on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, pending any announcement for a potential merger or takeover. So it looks like that initial report from Bloomberg was accurate. Leyou was definitely up for sale, and a bid has been accepted. We don't know who, what, how much. We don't have any of those details right now. I'd imagine we'll find out very soon, possibly by the time I upload this, which would be unfortunate because then we can't really talk about the confirmation of it. But either way, excellent segue to our next news story, which is that about a month ago, and we didn't touch on this news when it came out in mid-June, but about a month ago, it was being reported that AT&T was looking into selling off Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment for about $4 billion, and they were trying to rationalize that to pay down their $150 billion of debt, which is absurd. But that was the initial report, and at the time, we were being told that the interested parties were EA, Activision Blizzard, and Take-Two. Well, now we're hearing from theinformation.com that Microsoft has joined the fold, and they are absolutely looking into making this $4 billion transaction possible. Rumor, of course, keep that in mind, but now we totally got to talk about this. What's at stake here? Let's go over all the subsidiaries at Warner Brothers, starting with Portkey Games. This is a very recent studio that started with Harry Potter Wizards Unite. That's a collaboration with Niantic for that mobile release. That's a Pokemon Go spinoff. But some of the big stuff, Monolith Productions, that's Middle-earth, that's the Fear franchise, Condemned, NetherRealm Studios, that's Mortal Kombat, so that's a major one. Another big one here, Rocksteady Studios, that's the Batman games. You've got TT Games, that's multiple studios and subsidiaries for the Lego games. You've got Avalanche Software, they handle the Disney game properties, so like Disney Infinity, that was very recent for them. Then you've got Warner Brother Games, multiple studios and subsidiaries across the US and Canada. They do a bunch of co-development work and things like that on all these IP and franchises. But essentially what this deal looks like is a lot of talent and a lot of infrastructure, because the caveat here, of course, is that a lot of these developers work on licensed properties that will not come with this sale, no doubt. You're not going to get the Batman IP, Lord of the Rings, Disney, Lego. I believe Mortal Kombat will stay with NetherRealm, so that's definitely a good get there. But otherwise, everything else is still going to be held back with their respective rights holder, which will be WB, Disney, the Lego company, I believe, more than likely holds the rights to their own Lego property, right? They license that out for developers, or I believe they made their own development arm and then that was folded into what is TT Games today. But either way, I don't think the game licensing comes with that. Basically, this is a lot of infrastructure, a lot of top-tier talent across the globe, so no doubt there's nothing wrong with what's at stake here. Just a matter of whatever buyer steps forward is absolutely going to stipulate taking control of the current licenses that are in place, or certainly extending them, because obviously Batman's very important, Lord of the Rings is very important. I don't really know why people want Harry Potter games. We don't have any good ones, but seeing that license continue is very important. Same with Disney and Lego. I mean, they're not major games for a lot of these studios that we're talking about here, but I think for somebody like Microsoft, it actually makes sense. Granted, it's a big bill to foot that Microsoft could certainly do, but when I look at a transaction like this, I see a Game Pass transaction. I see all these developers pretty much operating as they normally would, but you just see day and date releases across X1, Series X, PC, Game Pass, and that's it, right? Make them exclusive for the franchises that make sense. You're not going to want to make Disney and Lego games exclusive. I mean, you're better off publishing those everywhere. Nobody's going to be buying a Series X for an exclusive Lego game, so leverage Mortal Kombat, leverage Batman if you've got that license, just like Sony did with Spider-Man. That moves hardware, so Batman could absolutely move some hardware on Xbox if it's a proper Batman game that comes out and does really well. But that's what Microsoft would have to do, is leverage Game Pass, secure these licenses a little bit further beyond whatever's in place right now, because they can either do that or just have all these developers do something else, which doesn't really make sense whatsoever. These are pretty specialized teams for what they're doing. It's not to say that Sony shouldn't buy WB or that Leyou Technologies is a much better deal. Rather, so many people get caught up in the numbers game of like, Sony should acquire everything, Microsoft should acquire everything, but it's really not like that. What makes sense for these companies? They're looking at everything, they're trying to figure out how does it match their portfolio and their strategies, which we've been talking about their diverging strategies for a while. They're both console manufacturers, but they do have some very different takes on how they're approaching and marketing their games. So, for something like WB, I don't even think it's really likely that Microsoft will do it, but I could see how it would fit into their lineup, into Xbox Game Pass, and with something like Leyou, might make more sense for Sony and how they want to allocate that talent, which is more specific talent compared to what we're looking at with WB, right? It's all about what makes sense for Sony and Microsoft. Now, as we're discussing all these business dealings, one thing we can say with certainty, at least, confirmed, is that Sony's made a $250 million investment into Epic Games. So this puts into perspective all the compliments that Epic's been making towards PS5 and their work on Unreal Engine 5, although presumably they're genuinely proud of their own work on UE5, and I'm sure they were really pumped about PS5 system architecture. I'm sure those were all genuine comments, just that they do have to play buddy-buddy since they've been so close together lately. And they've been close for many years, actually. They've always had a pretty good working relationship. But either way, this is a minority stake investment, so Sony doesn't have any major say in what Epic does. This doesn't mean exclusive games or anything like that, really. In fact, this is a very small minority stake. Epic's valued at like $17 billion, which makes Sony's $250 million. A 1.5% ownership stake in Epic, so not much, really. So initially I thought, okay, they have a lot of say in what Epic does, but probably not at 1.5%. You could still probably see some collaborative work, maybe some exclusive content here and there, but it wouldn't be anything major. I mean, this really is just a matter of Sony making an investment that they could easily see the return on and then some, and then sell off their shares down the road. So It's not a huge news story, but Sony did front up a lot of money, and it could be a more collaborative aspect where you've got Sony Pictures, right? So that we've got all this recent tie-in with what Fortnite's doing with live events, live music events, and things like that. So that could happen with movies or Sony Music. I don't know. It's something to that effect, right? It could be totally unrelated to Sony Interactive Entertainment, but maybe more continued marketing rights for Epic Games. Just this will probably go completely under the radar for most people that will totally forget that this investment was even made. Moving on to a patent that recently caught a lot of attention that's making my job very difficult in trying to properly explain and warn people about backwards compatibility, but this patent that was recently uncovered showcases PS1, 2, and 3 support via cloud gaming support. So it's all in Japanese, but what it describes is a large number of game titles across PS1, 2, and 3 and various generations of game consoles can be stored and used via the cloud gaming library. It even shows a PS1, 2, and 3, the consoles, right? These games can be run on a virtual machine that mimics the operating system associated with each game console. And then it talks about the PlayStation Store. It says, when you move to a game icon, a simple image will be played. It is also possible to play a video. Trial version can be started. Trial version data exists in the cloud and can be played immediately after selection. You can make the purchase of a mini version that you can play. If it's interesting, you can buy the main game. Both can be played instantly from the cloud. So a lot of people, I think, are just reading the tweets or the headlines and not even realizing that this is referencing cloud gaming, and not even realizing that this particular patent, if they follow the link, actually showcases a lot of patents, but notably only highlights, this one's from 2012, with one of the inventors being David Perry, who originally was head of Gaikai in PlayStation Now. He was at the PS4 reveal in 2013, the February event, where he even talked about these very things that we have today on PlayStation Now. How is this new? I'm shocked that so many people didn't, see this, but the trial version of a game, that is exactly what David Perry was preaching in 2013 during the PS4 reveal. Now, we never got that, of course, but when he left Sony in 2017, about 2 years after, he talked about how he was pushing some of these features, and basically Sony didn't follow through with a lot of them. But, we have trailers on the PlayStation Store. We have PS3 streaming, which are running off of modified PlayStation 3, so not necessarily a virtual machine, but you are running a modified PS3 console that has a simplified XMB, so you're using the operating system of the platform as well. We have PS2 games, we have PS1 remasters. This is what I've been discussing, is that if you get any sort of backwards compatibility, which we do have some sort of backwards compatibility, it's just limited, like I've been saying. I'm just trying to be realistic on this channel, so yeah, that's what you're getting from me so far. Next up, Microsoft has finally confirmed the date for their next Xbox game showcase. That is July 23rd, and this is one where we can expect some first-party games, so I'm very excited about that. There will definitely be some third-party in there as well, so as I often preach, it's worth watching their show, even if you don't care about buying a Series X. There's going to be some software in there that you're going to probably be interested in, so always worth checking out. But I'm definitely stoked to see what they've got lined up for their platform. But over on Twitter, we have Tom Phillips of Eurogamer, who tweeted out, "Looking forward to Xbox, and a reminder, PlayStation plans to fire back in a state of play soon after." Some people are really taking attention to this, but we've known for a little bit now that we're expecting a state of play in August, but we don't even need to know that because we don't have a price, release date, we haven't seen the UI, we haven't seen features detailed, we have not seen more game announcements, to which I'm not even sure we could expect that much more in terms of PlayStation Studios, at least. I mean, we saw 9 at that initial reveal. That's a lot of games out of what is wholly owned Sony IP. So, I mean, even if we see, probably we could see that like soft reboot of Silent Hill, right? That was MIA at the original PS5 reveal. So we could see something like that. That would be a nice announcement, but probably some more gameplay of what we've already seen, some more third party. I would still really like to see some kind of announcement regarding current PS4 games running on PS5. I'd like to see what those boosted frequencies look like, showcase us some, first-party content that are getting some slight PS5 enhancements, tell us they're free, do something like that, right? I think a lot of people are really expecting that. That would be a good place for the state of play to reassure people that currently have PS4s. It's going to look great on PS5. Microsoft's been pretty forthcoming about that. It's still pretty important for Sony to do that as well. So those are some things that we could see at the state of play, but I don't want to see that many more game announcements from Sony because we still need, a thorough timeline here where we get exciting game announcements 2-3 years from now. I don't want to see Sony's lineup for the next 3 years because then that's a very boring 3 years of state of plays, consumer-focused events, trade shows if they ever go to them, where they continue to show us the gameplay of games that we already know about, right? You don't want that. So, but there still is a lot that we need to learn about PS5. With all of that out of the way, it's time to get to Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway where one of you could win a $10 PSN code. I'd like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter. If you would like to win a $10 code, it's very easy. Follow the link down below. We do this every single week on Let's Talk PlayStation. Supporting this channel a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week because I'm trying to pay for your games. Those are all the news stories that I want to talk about with you all from this past week. On Tuesday, we took a break from some PS5 topics and news. I still like doing the unboxings, like I told you, so we had a new unboxing finally. I paid about $130 for just a completely random lot. Very high price to game ratio, but some pretty good pulls in there. Go check it out. And this coming Tuesday, we do have some new upcoming PS5 topics that were too long to include in this video, so we'll probably do something like that. We got some long form videos that are nearing completion, so I'm excited to finally get those uploaded. So always some good stuff coming every Tuesday, as always. Other than that, though, that's it. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.